And sometimes when they get into a really like big play session, it's very energetic and you're like, oh my gosh, are they going to fight now?
Right.
And you just move them away from each other. And then they're like, no, we want to go back. Then that's your understanding of now, oh, they really did like that. But if one moves away and you move the other away and then you let go of the other one and he goes tearing over to the first dog who's saying, no, please stop, you've got to intervene. You've got to do something because it should be a good experience for both of them. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Dog Sense. I'm your host, Kathy Santo, and I'm joined by my co-host, Sarah. Hey, Sarah.
Hey, guys. Awesome podcast today. We have our amazing trainer, Nikki from the school joining us to actually talk about one of our amazing classes that we do, dog park class.
I just want to say that Nikki from the school reminds me of Jenny from the hood.
Jenny from the block.
From the block.
Jenny from the block.
Not much different.
Same name.
I should never reference anything but dog training. It's just my lane. Okay. So, Nikki from the school. We want to talk about a class that you teach that, and you have a lot to say about it. So I'm just going to turn you loose. Tell us what dog park class is, since a lot of people are aware that we don't exactly love dog parks.
Yeah, so that was the first thing that I was going to say, that myself and Stacey, who's one of the other instructors at the school, run this class, dog park class, in lieu of making sure that people do not go to dog parks. I think one of the biggest things that people learn from it is why we are such sticklers about not going to dog park, because really what we're focusing on is having a nice group of social dogs who are sometimes a little bit too excited. Some dogs have to learn how to play with other dogs, but they all have an idea of that we want to. We just have to learn how to. So I think what's really important is that it helps owners learn what's good play, what's bad play, how good play can turn to bad play, and knowing the dog body language of when it's going well and when it's maybe getting a little bit too cranked up and when there's a point to interrupt.
So talk about the groupings, right? So obviously we puppies are not playing with big dogs, and
Correct. Sometimes
even big dogs are not appropriate for other big dogs. So talk about the size, the age, and the temperament levels and how you determine groups.
So these dogs are, we say, anywhere close to a year, one, just because of the physicality of, puppies should play with puppies and, sizing and all of that. But the dogs we match together, it's very similar to speed dating, where everyone has a different play style, a different personality. And I think it's important to kind of almost equate it to like going out to dinner with friends of friends, where you might like to go out with your one friend, but if they bring their other friend along, it may not match, but with enough conversation and good food and maybe something good to drink, you can do it, right? You know how to be cordial. And I think that's the biggest thing, where the dogs have to learn, okay, you're going to be my best friend. I may not love your play style, but what we're teaching the dogs is being able to know, if you're not liking it, you have the option to walk away. You have the option to give the signal. And I think what's important is most important for the owners is to know what their own dog is saying, that if they are not loving it, if they're loving it too much, and kind of finding that sweet spot right in between.
Let's talk about something I'm sure people are thinking, which is, Kathy, you just told us in other podcasts that you should be the most important thing. Why are you letting dogs play with each other? So talk about some of the benefits that there is just getting a dog to have a great social vocabulary. And also, how do you create that want for you when you're doing little play groups like this?
Right. You want your dog to be able to interact appropriately and safely with other dogs, right? You might have friends or family who have the dog coming over for the holidays or a play date, things like that. Play is really natural for the dogs. It's great for biological fulfillment. It can burn off a ton of physical and mental energy for your dog. And it's just most dogs really enjoy. Not all dogs love to play with other dogs. But if you have a dog who is social and wants to play, you want to make sure they can do it appropriately and safely. And then another piece, so how we make sure that we're still really exciting and the best thing ever is when the dogs are playing, we're not just, turning the other way and not paying attention anymore, right? We're still really recalling the dog back to us. Maybe we are communicating in play to leave it or to down, or, if we do need to recall them back to us, then we give them that awesome tug toy. Then they really play with us. They love us. Then we send them back to play, right? So there's breaks during play where we're still making sure that the dog is listening and checking in with us. They haven't totally tuned us out.
you go. You're the guest. You go.
And I was just going to go off of one of the things that Sarah said, two things, where there are definitely some dogs who are social and who do want to play, but it's almost too abrupt. We almost call it a torpedo, the way that they come in, because you have to think about socialization in the fact that some dogs who are very exuberant and very excited, some other dogs may not receive that well. That's like if I was to run to the supermarket and hug every single person that I saw, it would be a little bit off, right?
I would not mind if Nikki hugged me.
I would.
Sarah would
Sarah, not a
Sarah does
hugger.
Not a hugger.
So it's
High fives.
important that the dog, one, knows how to kind of engage in play and read the other body language signals from the other dog, which we're facilitating as the humans. Where one of the big things is that if a dog is getting a little bit overwhelmed, sometimes we'll handicap one dog. And if the other dog who is overwhelmed tells us what they want, which is either walking away, which means they don't want more, or they come back to the dog that we handicapped, they're like, okay, they just needed a break, but they want some more. So it's always facilitated by the humans. What's also a really big important piece of how we run dog park class is that we're always interrupting, whether that's standing on the leash, asking for downs, but we're working on recalls. We're always working on recalls off of play, and that shows a lot of owners what they kind of have to work up towards, right? It's hard to come off of play. But what's also important when we're doing different groups and different speed dating, the other dogs are holding place. So there's still a level of accountability that the other dogs have to do to have some impulse control when dogs are playing. That's hard.
And I think people think that their dog has a great recall because they're practicing in their house or in their yard, and that arousal level is not way up there.
Yep.
But it's like those impulse control games that we teach, right? At some point, they don't have a pulse. They know the game, right? They're like, yeah, I know this game. I'm not going to grab that thing. But the real test of it is, can your dog be running and chasing and engaging and come off of that? That's the test of the training. So let's do this. Let's talk about who needs to come to dog park class. And then secondarily, what are the biggest struggles that you see that people have? And then after that, we'll go into ways that we fix it. So who needs to come to these classes?
So we like the dogs to come to our dog park class who do want to play, who have to kind of figure out kind of their footing on how to bring it down a level, bring it up a level. And there are some dogs who, one thing that we actually really love students to do, who are having issues with their dog being high arousal on the street. Maybe they got into a little tussle with a family friend, you know, all of those types of situations where sometimes we actually like the person, the owner who is struggling with dog play, just to have the human come. Where we have a lot of people who come and observe because they're like, oh, you know, I didn't know that that wasn't good. So maybe if I interrupted here, the situation that I thought I needed to come for dog park for actually could have been prevented. So I think there's a lot of education just by coming and watching and observing. I do think we sometimes run smaller groups in a different type of hour, right? We have our kind of big play hour, and then we have another hour where it's small dogs, because small dogs do want to play, but sometimes they're intimidated by, you know, big burly type of dogs. And they're like, I don't want to look like a rabbit to these dogs. So we do small dog play as well. And some of those dogs who come to small dog play groups, those are the dogs who just need to feel a little bit more confident. And what we do is actually set them behind an exercise pen. So there's no tension on the leash, which is one of the things that a lot of owners do. There's no tension, and the dog has the ability to kind of go sniff, but then move away. And I think that's really important for those dogs. I've seen incredible progression with a lot of dogs who were a little bit nervous that came to small dog play group, and now they don't need the exercise pen anymore. They might be playing more with their owners, but having the other dogs around. And that, I think, is a big part of what socialization is.
And I also think in a dog park class, when Stacy and I used to do them back in Ramsey, one of the things I would always do is I would have chairs on the floor so that when the little dogs were playing, there was a place for them to go underneath. And that was a nice big red flag to the other puppies, like, hey, I'm under this chair.
Space.
I do not want to play with you anymore. So it's always good to have that. And I think people, they have bad experiences at dog park, and they may not realize it's a bad experience until the dog blows up on a walk or with their friend's dog, or it's just, there's so many things that you, the human, need to learn. And so let's talk about that. Let's talk about tips to create a perfect play session for the owners, because I feel like they're going to have friends over with dogs and they're going to want that interaction. So Sarah, let's coach them on how to create that so we don't have a visit to the vet ER.
Okay. So my first thing is always go for a walk first, right? Let the dogs get used to each other without any forced interactions, right? Don't go right for the nose to nose hello or the nose to butt sniffing, right? Let's go for a walk first. Let them get used to each other. If they want to go sniff each other, the sniffing should be about 1 to 2, maybe 3 seconds at a time. Then create some movement, right? Step in between them or guide them away with the leash. Let them keep going on their walks. Then when you come back to the house, if that went well, kind of take a gauge of the situation, right? Did they really like each other? Were they kind of neutral about each other? Did you get weird vibes off the body language where you might say, hey, I don't know if this is a great play situation? But either way, take whichever kind of vibe you got from it, then go to the backyard. Don't then go right into the house. If you can, try to go to the backyard next. Then maybe you have them drag their leashes around the backyard. Again, watch the interactions. And that's where you then want to be making sure your dog is still paying attention to you. Have the super high value treats, have the tug toy, have each owner kind of call their dogs back to them. Make sure that you're still a part of it. And again, watch the body language. Then from there, if they kind of start playing, they start running around, a lot of times I'll just let the play happen outside so that when we come inside, we then have a calmer state of mind. Sometimes dogs can get a little bit inky about other dogs coming into their personal space. I'd make sure all the toys are picked up, make sure that, there's no bones out or anything like that. And then when we come inside, I would then try to have that be a calm environment.
Great. I think one of the most important things that you had mentioned, and I'm sure we could do a whole another podcast on just dog to dog greetings, especially on the street.
Yes, we will do.
One of the things that you had mentioned, Sarah, that we are always talking about in dog park is the over sniffing, because over sniffing is like a hug that lasts too long.
I would be okay.
Some people, it's fine. But with dogs, it becomes very uncomfortable. And another point that you had made is that space matters. If you're trying to do play in a small studio apartment, going to get inky. But that's why we like to have a lot of space, because sometimes just having a little bit more space makes dogs feel a little bit more comfortable.
I also want to point out that you need to look at the other dog, not just your dog, right?
Exactly.
Because your dog is sniffing up a storm on this dog's body and you're like, oh, look, my dog is so happy, right? But the other dog is miserable.
Right.
And throwing body language that maybe your dog is ignoring or doesn't understand or doesn't care. And you're about to have an altercation. And this is where the phrase, I don't know, they were just hanging out and all of a sudden, boom, a fight happened.
Right.
Exactly. There is no boom. Well, there is, but there's a lot of little booms that happen before the big one. So you are responsible for understanding what you're looking at.
I think what helps people understand the phrase body language, and the way I kind of have some of my students understand what body language is the same way that I took a nonverbal course in college, where I understood if I was uncomfortable, I would turn my shoulder to someone. So there are very subtle little things that dogs do before there's actually a big response.
And I want to point out that some people say, I've had dogs all my life. I know dogs. Okay. I've had teeth all my life and I'm not a dentist. So it doesn't mean because you own dogs that you understand dogs or dog body language. And it can change in a second. That's the other thing I think people need to understand. Your dog can be playing fine, and maybe their bucket gets too full. They're right at the point of popping. And if you don't notice that's going to be a problem.
Yep.
And they're not the same day to day. It's not like my phone, right? I pick it up whenever I pick it up is always the same thing. Your dog today could have a toothache you don't know about or whatever. So really take the temperature of the dog that you're dealing with in the moment to understand what's going to be appropriate for them right now.
I was going to say, the breaks during play are so important, and we just want to make sure that you understand that, right? So maybe after 3 zooms around the yard and a little bit of wrestling, you then take a break. Now, how you take the break depends on your dog. If you can recall them back to you, awesome. If you need to then go physically step in between them to then create some space, let everyone take a break, do that, right? Those breaks are what's so important to help make sure. Then we can take a look. Did the other dog go back for more play, or did they try to go to the house to get some water or something, right? Or did they did they do something that indicated, I'm a little bit done right now, I want to take a break. So taking those breaks allows your dog to further communicate, listen, do I want to keep playing or do I need a break?
And sometimes when they get into a really big play session, it's very energetic and you're like, oh my gosh, are they going to fight now?
Right.
And you just move them away from each other. And then they're like, no, we want to go back. Then that's your understanding of now, oh, they really did like that. But if one moves away and you move the other away and then you let go of the other one and he goes tearing over to the first dog who's saying, no, please stop. You've got to intervene. You've got to do something because it should be a good experience for both of them.
Play and play is it's fluid. And one thing that can be challenging for owners to learn, especially the people who consistently come to dog park, I think they almost get annoyed that there's no black and white answer sometimes, because one of the things that can happen is that the dog is giving a body language signal that could mean something like stress or arousal. But you have to look at all the other body language pieces. If a dog's becoming very still, but they're a little bit wiggly, that's a little bit still and wiggly because I'm about to bounce into play. But if I'm still and giving you side eye and licking my lips, those are body language cues that one dog can be saying, hey, you better back off, or I'm going to have to tell you to back off. So sometimes what looks like the dogs are becoming tense is actually a little bit more play, but it's just, you have to know what you're looking at. And it changes.
They're really subtle.
Yeah.
You have to learn the native language of your dog.
Correct.
And it is not English, and there is no app for it. So you got to figure it out. Now, I want to talk about declining play. Like you get the opportunity, your dog, like your friend comes over, oh, can my dogs play? You may need to say no, and you should. Don't feel awkward or pressured or like a jerk if you say no. You need to stand up for your dog. You're their advocate, right? And if you know it's going to go sideways, and how many times have we had students, Sarah, you too, where they come to you because their dog got in a fight and they say, I knew I shouldn't have done it. The dog wanted to play. It felt bad, and I just ignored it and went on with it. No, don't ignore your gut.
And there are some situations, because again, everybody who comes to dog park class, there are some people who come consistently, and then we always have new people. So sometimes we'll think, oh, we know this dog's personality and temperament, so this could be a good match. We always actually start out with walk-bys, like kind of Sarah was saying. We always want to do something neutral, so that way everyone's reading the expressions of the dogs. And sometimes what we think is going to go well, some dogs are sniffing the floor and trying to go in the other direction. The dog's already saying before the play is even happening, I don't want to play with this dog. And then we get the opposite too, where we didn't think it was going to be a good match, but the body language said, hey, I'm actually kind of interested in this dog. And now we have a new pair of best friends.
You know who's really hard to read for people? Ray, my golden. She gets hackly and puffs up when she's happy, when she's excited, when she's kind of freaked out, when she's a little bit pissy. Like, she's like that all the time. Like, it just pops up. And that's the piloerector reflex, if we want to get geeky. And it is something that they do not control. It is a reflex. It is like you getting goosebumps. So you have to know that there's a lot of things it could mean. And that's why the dog, we always say, is a combination of all the body parts. You got to look at everything. So you can't just look at the fluffiness. You got to look at what else. What's the movement like? Is it staccato? Is it wiggly?
You know what we have to talk about? What the tail means.
Ooh. All right, we'll end it on the tail.
Everybody on 3. Ooh. The tail is, I think, a big misconception for a lot of people. I thought everything was fine. Their tails were wagging. And the tail wagging just means that the engine is running. If you've ever seen dogs kind of get into an issue, those tails are going. Have you ever seen dogs who are doing, protection work? Those dogs, the tail is moving.
Oh, yeah.
That does not mean anything. So again, that's why body language is so important.
You got to learn it.
Yeah.
Got to learn it.
All right. So our top 3 tips are knowing the body language, right? What else? Declining play if you have to.
Declining play, especially on the street. Because I think, I don't know if we mentioned this, but one of the things that we're constantly nagging everyone about before we hook everyone up to long lines and tell them to drop it after we've done several interactions, don't have a tense leash. And that's the hardest part, and why I'm always a stickler on not letting your dogs greet people on the street. Because even if the play was going to go fine, if you're physically holding the leash back but telling the dog to go forward, that's like holding someone back in like a bar fight. It makes them want to go forward. It's that oppositional reflex.
Would make me want to go forward.
So play breaks, I think, was one of the other ones. And I think those are our top 3 tips. Anything else, guys?
I think you should all come to our body language classes for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that you should, if you're in New Jersey, you're in our school, you definitely need to come to dog park. Like Nikki said, you can be an observer and then bring your dog. You're going to learn so much, and your dog's going to be tired at the end. Definitely. So then you can go out to dinner.
And if you haven't been coming to classes, definitely make sure that you come to a few obedience classes too. For that way, we know that you have a pretty decent recall, you have a go to place and stay there. So that's why if you want to just I just want to get in to learn, always come and observe. We're always having people come and observe.
Yep. All right,
cool. Awesome. All right, guys, as always, if you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you'd like, rate, subscribe, tell a friend, and share this episode somewhere. Our goal is to continue creating an awesome community of dog lovers and learners. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Bye, guys.
Bye.